$50 billion. That's what US government is going to spend on AI agents in 2025. And, many of you are building your agents. Build your agent, you're trying to sell it, maybe raise your Series A. There are government agencies out there right now who are looking for agents to deploy. They have budgets and need agentic AI. US government is investing a lot of money into agentic AI. And today with us, we have Cordell Robinson. Cordell has sold over $2 billion to US government in different contracts. He is a former Navy intelligence analyst, and he has been in this field for over 20 years.
My name is Cordell Robinson. I'm the CEO of Brownstone Consulting Firm. So what we do is cybersecurity from beginning to end. We've been in the AI market for a couple of years now. And, one of our niches with cyber is also making sure that we can provide secure services to the government, especially secure AI agents to the federal government, because there's requirements that they have. They're still working on some of the requirements as we speak, actually, before it's finalized. But they're still bringing in and adopting those things because all of the technologies are going to be going toward that. So I'm really excited to be on the podcast here with you and to kind of give everyone some information. And so my background is very extensive, been in this field for over 25 years. And just very excited to be here.
Thank you, Cordell. So let's start with the basics. So what does one do? So I have an agentic system. I'm an entrepreneur. I've built it. And, I want to sell it to the US government. How do I start?
Okay, so first you start by going to a site called sam.gov. And so on sam.gov, you would register your business. You have to register your business there. You have to get what's called a cage code. Once you get your cage code, then there's some other codes that you have to also get. But all of it's on the sam.gov website. It walks you through basically step by step. You have to put in your company information. Of course, your company has to be an LLC. You have to have a tax ID number and all of those things as well. And then once you have that, then you go to the Duns and Bradstreet website and get your DUNS number, because a DUNS number is also required. And make sure that you enter all of the information that the sam.gov website is going to require for you to compete for contracts with the federal government, because to sell to the federal government, it's competition based. So it's not just like you just go to them and say, I have this great product or I have these AI agents I want to sell you. And you basically give a presentation and they buy it. It's not that simple. There's an entire process with it, and it's all competitive.
That makes sense. And from my understanding, a lot of agencies now are looking to acquire AI agents. US government is making a big investment into getting basically a lot of the US government agencies agentic, so to speak. And so what are they looking for now? What kind of agents do you see are in demand?
So I know that a lot of agents that are in demand are agents in the cyberspace, agents that will help detect anomalies, detect vulnerabilities, and also like human type situation with the different agents as well, or like, human behaviors as they use different systems. So if you're building agents like that, that's going to be very valuable. They're also looking for agents that's going to help with efficiency and speed, because the government is scaling down in people, but scaling up in technology. And so technology is where to go to really make your money nowadays with the federal government and really state governments. But the federal government is where a lot of the money is. Billions and billions of dollars is out there, and there's just not enough smaller companies that are selling to the federal government. So you have your really large companies, of course, they have a huge, engineering shop that is creating these things. But the federal government also has what's called small business set asides. And so they release contracts for small business set asides, and you want to go after those, or you want to find the larger companies that are in AI. As we know, been on the news, Palantir is one of the really big companies that are involved as well right now, and several other companies dealing with AI. So reach out to those companies, have a presentation ready, make sure your presentation is very tight, make sure that your agents and your product is going to solve problems, because the biggest thing is, are we solving problems? Are we solving a government problem? So do research on the agencies that you want to go after to make sure that what you're doing is going to basically fit their environment. So that'll be really, really helpful.
So, what is a typical life cycle of me starting? So, this small business fund sounds interesting because I'm sure the contracts are not very small, and you can really get those agents deployed across a vast number of US government agencies. So, what is like, so if I was to start the process, what does the compliance look like? What certifications do I need to have? What do I need to bring to them as a small agent developer, as a bootstrapped or as a like Series A funded company? How do I take my what do I need to sell to them?
So some of the things that you would need to sell to them is make sure that your business is what's called NIST 800-171 certified or CMMC certified for DoD. So DoD has a special separate certification that is required. November 10th, it is being mandated, meaning that if you do not have CMMC, you cannot do business with DoD, which is the Department of Defense. And for all of the other federal agencies, you have to have a minimum of what's called the NIST 800-171 certification. You can look all of this up online. The information resources are online, and then reach out to the companies that provide the readiness and provide the audit services to actually get you properly certified. So once you are properly certified, that's going to put you, in front of the right people, and that's going to really help a lot with being able to get those government contracts, making sure that beyond, registering your government, that you get those certifications. According to the size of your company, the certification could be complex or it could be very simple because you may not have too much data, but there are certain policies and processes that are required by the government that you're going to have to be able to do business. And so even when you're partnering with companies, if you go to them and you have these certifications in hand, they're going to pick you first. And so that they know and understand that you understand what the government requirements are, and they won't have to worry about any mishaps, any issues, or things like that.
So how long does it typically to get take to get one of those certifications? Like, is this something
So
you can go to Vanta for, or
So to typically it takes for NIST 800-171, it takes 3 to 4 months, and then CMMC it's 6 to 9 months. Unfortunately, there's a backlog with CMMC because there's over 50,000 companies that still do not have the certification, and there's only 143 auditors that actually are certified to grant the certification. So I would say get started as soon as possible because I believe the availability for the next auditors is not going to be until March of 2026. So I would say you can get started now with your readiness because there's lots of readiness companies out there that can get you ready, which will take between now and March. So by the time March comes around, you're ready for your audits. And so then you can basically now reach out to the auditors, and there's information's online at the CMMCAB. You Google CMMCAB, you can find that information there. But then there's different companies that provide the readiness, and then they will walk you through and get you ready for your March deadline. And also, they always connect you with the auditors. So they let the auditors know, like, we've started this process, they'll be ready by this date. And so then you can kind of get on their calendar. And it's best to always plan ahead so that you can get on their calendar. And then once you go through that process, then you're ready to basically bid on contracts for the government. Contract bidding, there's a timeline for that. So contracts come out, you usually get about 30 to 60 days to write your proposal and bid. Make sure that proposal is speaking to what the government is asking for and what they need, and also go a little bit above and beyond and see what problems you can solve by doing your research on those agencies. And then that way, once you bid, usually the award happens. They tell you on the different sites, sam.gov and GSA schedule as well. And I'll talk about GSA schedule next, how you basically, they tell you the date of the award. And so you know when that comes out. And so once you know that the date of the award, you either get a letter saying that you won or you didn't win in an email. If you did not win, you always want to ask for a debrief because they'll tell you and give you pointers on why you didn't so that when you bid for the next contract, you understand and know what gaps that you had so that you can be able to bid. So, and for GSA schedule, that's a different process. That's where most of the contracts will be, which will be on the GSA schedule. A lot of them aren't out just yet, but come 2026, there's going to be a lot of AI contracts out on the GSA schedule. So I would say start that process to get on the GSA schedule now. It takes about if you put the documents together, about 2 months to do that. So you can do that at the same time that you're doing your CMMC or your 800 171. It's quite a bit of work, but the reward is wonderful because small business set asides are up to $25 million. Once you go over the $25 million threshold, then you're no longer really considered small. But you have to run multiple $25 million contracts, not just one. To I consider it small. And I believe it's up to once you get to 100 million, and once you're at 100 million, then you're starting to compete with the larger companies. But at 100 million, you would have grown because you would need to have hired quite the staff to be able to satisfy the requirements of that contract. But it is very possible.
So, in terms of getting compliant and getting
Mhm.
myself to those registries, is there any partners I can reach out to or any kind of organizations I can find? Because, not all of us are savvy in the government
Mhm.
bureaucracy. We're
Sure.
builders, we build technology, we're good at that, but we're not really
Mhm.
great at filling out forms. So what is like some of the ways that we can accelerate that or find maybe people we can connect with to help us get that?
Sure. So a division of my company, we actually provide that service. So you can reach out to my company. And I also have a huge business partners and different companies that own companies that do the same thing. So what I do is I share their work. So if we are already busy and loaded with doing this work for some companies, and then I would connect you with other very good and reputable companies that will help you with your readiness as well. So we have an entire Rolodex of great companies to include my company that will definitely help you through all of these different processes.
It's interesting. So let's say we partner and I get my product somehow gets approved for one of these government agency projects. How long do they normally take to deliver? What does that project look like? Like what would I have to contribute in terms of will I get the money up front? How does the money come in? Like what do I get up front? What do I get after? How does that negotiation happen with the government?
So how that works is when the contract is according to is if it's a firm fixed price for time and materials. And so how it works is you have so many hours per month per what's called an FTE. So that each person is considered an FTE. And so it's usually contracts are 5 or 6 years. There are some contracts that are 10 years, but those contracts that are 10 years are 1 billion and up for 10 years. And then the contracts under that usually are 5 or 6 years. You would bill every single month. You would bill the government every single month those hours. So let's say you have 10 employees, they would build, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. When you calculate those hours, there are rates on the GSA schedule for the different types of FTEs. So you would know what the hourly rates that you would charge to the government. And then, of course, your employees they would negotiate what their salary is so that you would profit because you have to run a business. So there has to be profit margins. So you have to set your profit margins. And so then that way you pay your employees and you're also coming in with a strong profit margin. It's usually about around 30 to 50% profit margin per FTE, which is good. So let's say uh, usually you may be pulling in on a 5 year contract. You're probably pulling in about 250,000 to 2 million a month. And then once you paid it out, then you just kind of cut that in half, and that's what your profits are. And you just bill every single month, and then they pay every single month. Now there are deliverables that the government will require. They'll let you know what those deliverables are. That's what you need to have a project or program manager to manage that unless you know how to do it yourself. And they would make sure that you have a project schedule and you meet those deliverables that the government will require. And basically, but they don't, of course, they don't need you to deliver everything immediately. It's over time because one, they want you to get used to the environment. They want you to get used to the people that you're going to work with on the government side. And then they want you to begin to slowly implement into the environment because government doesn't move really fast, and they want to make sure that the implementation is nice and clean and the implementation is secure as well.
Let's talk about existing product companies. If I have an
Mhm.
existing product and it like
Mhm.
almost matches what the government needs, it needs maybe some tweaks for their on-premise deployment. How do I build for that? How do I Like, because then I don't have FTEs, right? I will have a like limited
Mhm.
amount of commissions. So will they pay my license and they will pay my whole licensing fees, and then I will just bill them for whatever extra customization? Is that how it works?
Correct. So yeah, so if you're just selling a product, it's the same thing you would compete to. You would basically you could either compete to sell a product, but there's also another way. The government has on the schedule where you can sell products instead of just products and services, and then you basically present your product, and then you price it. The government will negotiate, and they kind of tell you, okay, we're willing to pay this much, or there's licensing. They'll say, okay, we'll buy 250 licenses, or we'll buy 1,000 licenses at $100 per license, or $500 per license, or $1,000 per license. And then you basically make sure that you have all those ready, and then you sell it. They write you the check, and you move on to the next agency.
Interesting. You talked about security. What kind of security do they require? Is it just like a normal SOC 2 audit, or do they do their own audits? Like, do I need to have a SOC 2 before I even bid? Or would that be something that they will do anyways on their own, and they'll just do the security testing of that and penetration testing and come back to you with whatever details they have?
So your NIST 800-171 basically be your in-house security audit that you would do. And then once it's within the government, what you would do is you would white glove, what's called white gloving your product. And so you would go through the white glove process of your product. I can send out what that looks like to you, and it's step by step to white glove it. And then once you do that, then your product is secure. And then what the government does is they will go through their own process, but once you sell it, you're fine. And then it'll be, within their hands to actually certify it with government standards, which will be 853, NIST 853 instead of 800-171, because now it has been basically the configurations have changed to meet government standards. So now it would have to go through the 853 process. The government, basically does that. They do that all the time with everything, every single application or product that they have within their environment. And so you won't have to worry about that once you have your 800-171 and you sell it. If you're just selling a product, and then they would go ahead and certify it on their end.
That makes a lot of sense. So, what would you tell to entrepreneurs who say, "Well, that sounds like a lot of work, to sell to the government. I'd rather keep like my SaaS, like B2B." Or what are some of the like unseen advantages? Some of the things that you've seen happen to companies who start to sell to the government. What are some of the transformations that are that will undoubtedly happen? You'll become more compliant. Obviously, you'll have a lot more paperwork to fill in, but you'll also get a lot more contracts and financial support from the government. But what are some of the unobvious things that happen to companies that start to sell to the US government?
So some of the great things is you would be able to partner with more larger companies to do business with, which will bring in more revenue, and it will increase your reputation throughout the federal and commercial space at the same time by doing that, which will help. If you decide at some point to sell your company, and then you can position yourself to literally, sell your company for, I mean, I've seen companies sell for 400 million to billions and billions of dollars, and then people just walk away and they either start another company, or they simply just kind of, retire and go on a beach for the rest of their lives in their 30s and 40s. So that's the advantages. So you're putting in the work, a lot of the work up front, so that you can get that reward within just a few years. If you really put in the work, then you're not working for 20, 30, 40, 50 years trying to enjoy retirement when you're not able to move around and really have all that energy. You're able to go to the Maldives and stay for 2-3 months if you want to, or even you know, buy, a mansion in the south of France at 30, 35 years old, if you like, because you put in all of that work, blood, sweat, and tears at the beginning. So it's so worth it.
It's really exciting. And I think we had a conversation where you said that potentially partnering with a firm like yours could basically get you in front of more buyers because you're
Hmm.
talking to those people all the time. So you can potentially do those kind of like, I wouldn't call it under the table. I would call it just, you come up and through the connections, they say, well, we have this product. Oh, well, we have this need, but we haven't really put out like an RFQ for it or RFP for it. So is that so? What are some of the things that like potentially partnering with your firm could bring to like a software company that builds agents and is looking to implement those agentic use cases at government scale?
So what that does is because we're in contact with different contracting officers or different personnel within the government, and sometimes a lot of times they do one-offs where they're like, okay, well, we need this now. We're just gonna pay for it, but then they want to make sure that the company is reputable, the company has gone through the right processes. So the companies that they trust, they work with before, those referrals are a lot more valuable than just a company trying to go to them. They're unknown, and so most likely the government's not going to want to do business with them. So it's really valuable to have those connections because it's a who you know world. And that's just basically how it is. It's who you know and who you connect with. And people are more trustworthy of those referrals than someone just saying, hey, I have like the best product ever. And they're like, you might, but we don't know who you are.
So getting those connections is extremely important. So
Yes.
me as a young entrepreneur, I built an AI agent. I have an agentic system. I have some customers. I'm looking to expand the government. I contact a company like yours. We figure out some sort of a deal together. You help me write up documentation if you have the capacity and you believe that this is valuable to the government. Because I think you will have to, as an entrepreneur, I would have to shop around across many different groups until I find the one who sells into agencies that have a demand for my service. And then
Hmm.
I would potentially just bring that over to you. We sign some sort of a paperwork deal and you help me with the paperwork. We sell it. You get a percentage of the sales. Is that how it generally works? Or am I not?
Generally sometimes. Yeah, so sometimes it generally works that way is according to the agreement. So sometimes we just come in and we help you get there and then we connect you where you could sell it, but according to what the product is and how it's going, we, try to help you sell it and then we'll negotiate what the percentage is by helping you sell it and how quickly we help you sell it. And then we come up with a small percentage and say, if you give us that percent, we'll, make sure that we can get it sold to not just bigger corporations, but to the federal government as well, which, they write the biggest checks.
Right. And so we've covered selling services, we've covered selling products. So if we are building agents, if you're an agent building company, or if you're an agent product company, you can come in, you can, sell your agent to the government. So what are some of the use cases that you see on the ground right now that they're screaming about, or something that you see that people should be building, or the solutions that people want, maybe like more in depth rather than generic? Like, what are some of those like earned
So
insight based solutions?
So they're looking for, like, for example, right now, the government uses intrusion detection systems, but they're not AI. So if you could build AI agents that act like intrusion detection systems, you'll be able to sell those because they are moving to the AI world. And so they're going to, and I know a lot of these intrusion detection companies are also creating AI agents, but because of the small business set aside that they have, you'll be able to either partner with those companies to sell or you'll be able to sell directly with the small business set aside for intrusion detection because that is one of the main things that the federal government is going to look for because of all of the breaches that constantly happen or the attempted breaches that constantly happen throughout the federal government. So that's one of the things that I think that, smaller companies should look into because there is now, and there's going to be a huge, huge demand for it, especially in 2026, as they transition over into the AI space throughout the federal government. So I would say intrusion detection is a really big one.
Any other ones that come to mind?
I would say machine learning software, so software that can help speed up processes faster for the federal government. So when I say processes, so let's say they have a ticketing system, so something like ServiceNow. So if you can create agents that are act like a ticketing system similar to like ServiceNow, then that way you can either, because I know ServiceNow is also in the works of creating these things, so you can partner with them, or you can have your own thing as a small business and create your agents for ticketing system because the government uses ticketing systems for break fixes, for configuration management, change management. So if you create agents that do those types of things will be very valuable as well because change management, configuration management, ticketing is also requirements that the government have. Like those are literally requirements that you can't get around if you don't meet those, if like they don't meet those requirements by the IG Inspector General audits or what's called the FISMA auditors, then there's all these violations that occur. They have to answer to Congress and it could become very messy. So they really, really want to make sure that they can get those things, but of course, making sure it's in a secure manner as well. So that's another avenue to go down as well.
Yeah, nobody wants to answer to Congress. And to
No,
your point,
no.
if you if you compete against service now enough on those big deals and you take some of them away from service now is most likely just gonna buy you. So that's an easy way to get acquired. If you steal deals from them, you end up getting
Hmm.
those small business deals with federal government and part getting those $25 million contracts. Then those big players are just gonna come and buy you because if you're winning those, then there's something
Yeah,
valuable in what you build, at least to them.
exactly. Yep, they want your technology, and so it's easier to just buy it instead of them trying to create it. And so a lot of times their technology is not ever really homegrown. Most of their technology is from other smaller businesses that they acquired, so that they can now have own that intellectual property and then go ahead and sell it. So I think it's a big advantage to be a small business, especially have a strong product and a strong niche.
It makes perfect sense. So how much would it cost me as a small company to do all this paperwork? Or are the deals I'm generally striking with companies like yours, they're like commission based where we close a deal and then we get you get a portion of our $25 million check, whatever they write us.
Mm. So it varies to the size of your environment. So if your environment's really small, it's around 30,000 to $50,000 according to the size of your environment. Of course, we can
Mm.
work out a deal to see like what that looks like. But if you let's say you're spending $50,000 to make $10 million, you're going to get your return on your investment, your first contract. You have to look at it that way because some most businesses sometimes don't have that kind of capital to be able to do that. But the CMMC audit itself starts at a minimum of $40,000. I don't control that pricing because it's totally separate. That's what the auditors start at.
Mm.
That's what they charge is $40,000. There's no way to get around that. But the different companies, like I have like what's called a smaller division, so we don't charge as much as the larger really large companies when it comes to getting companies ready because larger companies charge, I believe they start at 150,000 and then they go up to $1 million to go through this whole process. So it's best to go with a smaller firm to get it done because the larger ones you are going to pay a significant amount and you're not going to get that personal touch being able to speak to experts like directly and things like that. So it's worth the investment to be able to do that way.
And in general, how many right now small agentic companies do you see bidding on those government contracts? Is this like a well-known thing? Is there a lot of competition, or is this very niche and most of the companies don't want to go through those audits? So the competition, except for the large players like Plantier, is pretty slim.
It's pretty slim right now. And so now is a really good time for companies that do agentics to AI to get in because it is very niche. Not many small companies are doing it. So I say get in early, get in, make your money, get out so that you've gotten in early, you've built a name for yourself. So that could create longevity if you want that longevity, or you just want to make your money in the next 5 years. I would say go ahead and get started now so that you are in early while the market is not saturated with companies that are doing it. Because a lot of companies, like they're saying, oh, they do AI, but then they don't have all of the requirements to what the government is looking for. And so once they find that out, your company already knows this now. Here it is end of October. You're going to be way ahead. So it'll be next year when the government's announcing all these things. And so now they're going to be 6 months behind you. And so you would have already been bidding on your first contract. So they'll, 6 months to a year behind. And so right there, you have an advantage and they're going to, you do, of course, your product is high quality. They're going to go, continue to want to work with you and also the larger companies as well.
That's extremely interesting, extremely valuable. So, Cordell, I think thank you so much for being on the show. Is there anything else you'd like to mention? But I think this gives people a very good idea of what they need to do. And I think there is a lot of opportunity here for, for
Yeah.
us smaller companies to bid on those government contracts while it's hot. And, they're putting in $50 billion a year into this,
Hmm.
into US agencies procuring AI agents. So, like, you could have 100 million of that 50 billion if you just bid. If
Yes.
you get
Yes.
certified and bid, you can have a lot of success in that area, I think.
Yes, definitely. Before I say, last thing, jump in it now while it's early and it's not saturated because the money is out there. The government is going to be focused on AI across the board, especially in the services and security realm and in the products because they need it and they're going to pay for it. So jump in there early right now. So it's a really, really good idea. If anyone wants to reach out to me and they have any questions, any more questions at all, they can go to my LinkedIn, which is Cordell Robinson, or my website, www.b as in Bravo, C as in Charlie, F as in Foxtrot -US.
Thank you so much, Cordell. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Awesome. Thank you.